The recognized symbol of excellence in online entertainment.
And good evening. Welcome to tonight's broadcast of the BRS Hero Program and your host, George Pardos. So tonight I'm going to cover a subject that has seemed to come up in the last few weeks. And not just the last few weeks, but in the last, few years, few eternities. And it always comes up like that. So one of the things that I want to tell a short story. And you ever seen a movie, Navy SEALs? And the reason I picked this subject tonight is because it stays true regardless. In a movie, The Navy SEALs with Charlie Sheen, he says something to the effect, "I can trust you with my life, but not my money or my wife." And it is one of those things that in recent times, people, have attacked toxic masculinity, not just masculinity, but we've said that masculinity is toxic and so on. So one of the things that we talk about and that about how to become a better person is about how you become, what are the traits that you need to work on. So one of the things that Richard Marcinko talked about when he created SEAL Team 6 which is the counterterrorism unit. He wasn't looking for the top performance. He was looking for those guys that were medium performers, but they were trustworthy. And in recent times, I think that we have foregone the trustworthiness for performance. And let me give you let me give you an example of this. For some investors, Elizabeth Holmes made a ton of money for some of them. She even had James Mattis, who was was a Marine, was on her board of directors, and she stole $700 million from investors. Just got found guilty of fraud. The reason that she got away with some of the stuff she was doing is because she was able to perform. The recent times, the president of the University of Michigan just got fired for an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate at the school because he was using emails. It was a consent. Now it was a consensual relationship. I'm not trying to to go in another way, but it was a consensual relationship, and he was using emails and some funds, and it depends on who you look at the argument. He was using university funds. Well, guess what? He has brought in a ton of money to the university in the last few years, including the money that they've used for the football program, money that they use for the general the general fund of for students. Even under COVID-19, they haven't lost as much money. So, but again, if you're having an affair with a subordinate, are you trustworthy? Well, that becomes an issue that you really have to, to look at. And there's a thing in Bushido. Now, for those of you that know me, I've studied judo, I've studied martial arts, but there was a thing called Makoto. And, Bob, I'll address that in a second. Right is right and wrong. Yeah, but you got to remember, there are things that are legal and immoral, and there are things that are illegal and moral. It's not always about the law. It's about whether things are right. You take a look at this. Hiding people in your attic during the Holocaust was illegal. Was it the moral right thing to do? Of course it was. Anne Frank was being held. It was illegal to hide her, but it was the right thing to do. You take a look at some of the things that we've done over the last 100 years in the United States. A lot of things have been legal. Are they moral? And that's the problem, that we don't have an answer for that. So so the president of Michigan gets fired. And, because again, if you're going to have an affair, why would you use the university email? Why would you use their email to do, to have an affair? Again, those are the things that comes up. So I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to go back to the Bushido thing in a second, but I'm going to tell you a story. I had a really shitty time in boot camp. I went to Parris Island, and my yellow footprint day was June 11th, 1984. And in third phase, let me tell you, we had in August of 1984, we had 2 Black Flag days, and it started to wear on a lot of the recruits at Parris Island. It was an abnormally hot summer. Our platoon was not very disciplined. I was in platoon 1080. We were our favorite command from Sergeant Parker was platoon. Whoa, he would do the horse thing, or mob. Whoa. We had a hard time, and we finally got it together. There was a period of 2 weeks right after the in August. It was hell. I mean, and the one night I have me and one of the other recruits have guard duty, and we, and now I don't know what I would have done as a recruit. Just you walk around and you just, they're teaching you the basics of guard duty. And at the time, I mean, I don't know what I done. They didn't, I think they just gave us we had a canteen and a duty belt. I mean, that was it. I mean, I don't know what I would have done had I, ran into somebody either. I mean, I probably would have wrestled them, but there was a kid there was a kid in the camp where we were at that we were guarding the payphones. And the way the payphones were set up, there was 3 payphones in the back that were hidden. And for those of you that are not that old, we used to have phones that you had to use to put a quarter in, and you would be able to call people, and you could call them collect. Well, there was these 3 phone booths in the back that were very, kind of secluded. Nobody could. And the guy was like, "Hey, man, we can, I can sneak in and make a phone call. I'll watch for you. You watch for me." And I was like, "Bro, I can't do that. I can't." I mean, and he was like, what do you mean? What do you, dude, it's something as simple as making a phone call from from boot camp it would have made my day. I would have been able to call my dad, and I would have been, "Hey, I love you," whatever. I couldn't bring myself to do it because I had made you have your general orders, and that would have been violating them. And I couldn't imagine ruining my career in the Marine Corps or in boot camp for doing something as stupid as making a phone call. Now, I don't know, I don't know that would have happened. I would have probably, I don't know what would have happened. I really don't. Would I have, gotten this, would I have gotten thrashed in the sandpit for the next 2 weeks? Maybe. I don't know. But the point of it is my favorite saying in the Bible. Now, I'm not a diehard Christian. I'm agnostic. I have a hard time believing some of the things, but there's some things that they say. And my favorite saying in the Bible, bar none, is those who are faithful with little will be faithful for much. And so you have to be, in order to be in order to be trustworthy, you got to be trustworthy with the little things before you can be trustworthy with the big things. So I'll give you an example. In the magic of thinking big, this guy goes on a job interview. Now, the magic of thinking big, I think, was written in, I think, 1934, it was written, a long time ago. But it shows that nothing has changed that much. But what he says in it is this president or this guy that's hiring this young worker for his, for an office position takes him to lunch. And the guy, now they're at an MCL style cafeteria. And then so you go through the line, you pick the food and you put it on your plate and you go check out. And I kind of miss those days. And for those of you who don't know, MCL cafeteria is like going to grandma's house and picking out what you want. It's a great place. It's kind of like it's like the mess hall. You get a meal, but you got some other things there. Anyway, he hides a pat of butter. Now, I don't know what a pat of butter costs then, maybe a penny, but you have to pay for it. It's extra. And so he hid it underneath a roll so the cashier didn't see it. Guy didn't give him a job. He didn't give him a job. He was like, wait a second. If he's willing to steal a pat of butter in front of me while he's interviewing for a position, what do you think he would do if he was if he would get in a company where he actually had access to more money? And the point being is, it is those little things that dictate, the rest of your ability to be trustworthy. And those are the things that people, you talk about. If you want to have good things, people have to trust you with your word. And one of the things that you talk about is, in going to Bushido, is that Bushido is it was the moral code concerning samurai attitudes. But one of them always stood out to me. And the 7 virtues of Bushido are Gi, Rei, Yu, Mayo, Jin, Makoto, Chu. But Makoto is the one, Makoto is the one that always stood out the most. And it says, when warriors say they will perform an action, it is good as done. Nothing will stop them from completing what they say they will do. They do not have to give their word. They do not have to promise. Speaking and doing are the same actions. And the reason that this is important is that money comes and goes. It does. There are people that have lost fortunes and came back and, made another fortune, came back. I mean, they've lost, but that's one of the 7, what was it? The be impeccable with your word. If people can't trust you with your word, what you say to them, what are they going to not be able to trust you with? And here's the thing. If you're not willing to keep your word, don't say it. It's not the issue of, well, no, just don't promise. And that's another thing that they say in the Bible. Let your no's be no and let your yes be yes. And no is a complete sentence. So the problem that we have in society today, and especially with a lot of the things that happen in communities, and it doesn't matter whether, not just in the veteran community, but in other communities as well, is that we either you try to do too much, or number 2, you don't say what you're going to do. We had a saying and Ohio State had this, and other places, do what you say do. And if you are able to manage those small things, then the big things will come from it. And I think one of the problems is that it's a lot of the things that happens is, today, is that we are not that one of the things that we don't do today is we don't keep our word, and there's no price to pay for not keeping your word. I mean, it was like, and I don't know when it started. I really don't. I think it's maybe in the 90s when, we started not, when media started taking over. I did not have sex with that woman. Well, it's Bill Clinton. I can't do his impersonation. I got tonsillitis. I don't know if you guys can hear, and I'm sorry. I feel fine, but but the issue is that those little things add up to big things. Because if if you wound up like, and I'll give you an example. I'll give you another example. When you hand money to somebody, you always count it. Why? It's not that you don't trust them, but it's so both of you see the count, and you have and one of the things that if you ever watch, and I say this about trustworthiness, if you ever watch this, the Sting, right, or Paper Moon, in Paper Moon, he does the flip the 20s and does some of those things. He's doing too many transactions, right? Oh, I'll give you 20, you give me back 10, and he winds up getting an extra 5 out of the transaction, or an extra 10. So those are, there's a saying in it that came out, that's came out there: you cannot con an honest man. And if you think about this, I mean, how many people have been conned from people online because they're offering them $50 million to take money from overseas because they're, all of a sudden, they found an ancestor. Or the most common scam ever is the pigeon drop. And those for you that don't know what the pigeon drop is, at the beginning of the Sting, is somebody drops a wallet or some money, and the other person has to put in their money because they're showing good faith that they're good for it. And Gene, you're right about that. You do it to show them so that you know how much you gave, plus to make a mental note. But the point of it is that when you do these things, it's the small things. And so how can you do this in real life and be a better human? Well, keep your word. And if you don't want to keep your word, don't say you're going to do something if you don't want to keep your word, don't say that. And that's important in relationships. It's important in business, and it's important in friendships. If you're going to say, how are you going to trust your partner? And let's say, how are you going to trust your partner if they say, oh, you know what, honey, I love you, and then the next day you find out they're having sex with the neighbor? I mean, that's not going to go well. Number two is, you think about this for a second, and I've covered this numerous times. Most businesses can't survive most businesses can survive embezzlement. That is and that's a scary thing. They cannot survive divorce. A business is more likely to close down when one of the principals gets divorced. Why? Well, think about it. Who are you supposed to be the most trustworthy with? Your wife, right? That's supposed to be your partner. So if your wife winds up, basically screwing you over, what else are they going to do? Because and so if your partner screws you over or stuff like that, there have been plenty of, partnerships that have survived, partners, taking advantage of each other. Plenty of them. I give you a prime example. Steve Jobs left Apple, and he got betrayed. I mean, depending on who you listen to the story, he got he got betrayed by some people, but he came back, and it wasn't until Apple started declining that they brought him back, and now they're the number one company in the world, or top 3. So you can survive those things. What you can't survive is when you break up with your wife, with your wife in a business, or your husband, those things wind up. And I got to tell you, you take a look at Mackenzie Bezos. She walked off with $55 billion. That's a lot of money in a business that you lose, and she could have, here's the thing. She could have really tanked Amazon if she would have dumped all of that stock in the marketplace. She could have hurt not just Jeff Bezos, because I think she got 25%, but I mean, she could have hurt Amazon if she dumped $55 billion worth of Amazon stock in the marketplace. Amazon wouldn't have gone out of business. I mean, they're not, but it would have hurt their company. She chose to do the right thing. And, she took, not structured, but she took in smaller payments. So that's what I'm saying is that, you need to be in, you need to think about those things when you are, about being trustworthy. It's the same thing with being married to somebody and you can't trust them with money. I mean, seriously, how many people have you heard about this? And they made a law. I think hey Raymond, AJ Lucero, how you doing today? Raymond, True Blood, it's always a pleasure having you on. But they made a law because there was a Vietnam veteran that went overseas, and his wife took all their money and stuff like that, and he came back broke. And they made a law about that, about controlling that. So, and he was a prisoner of war. But the point of it is that trustworthiness is important for you to have is important for you to have a better quality of life. And when we talk about this, and a lot of people have what's the right term? A lot of people have problems with this because they think people want to hear something, and they don't. That's why I said earlier about let your no's be no's, let your yes be yes. And so, what can you take from this? Number one, be impeccable with your word. If you tell somebody you're going to do something, do it, because the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Number two is if you don't want to do something, don't tell somebody that you're going to do it. That is more than anything else. Do not tell people you're going to do something and not do it, because then you're going to have to wordsmith your way out of it. And number three, when you become more trustworthy, is people trust that better than performance. They would rather it's being reliable, like they said in The Departed. Who's reliable? I'm at 1 in 10 on you about Mr. French. Is you want to be reliable. You want to be that guy that is, we had a guy in our, that we used to talk about, Bum Scoop Coop. He would tell you, every time you heard something, he would tell you something you don't know what, could you imagine that your first sergeant would tell you formation is at 7, you show up at 5 till or 10 till, whatever time. And he said, why are you late? On the first sergeant, you said formation was at 7. I didn't say it was 7. I said it was 6:30. Could you imagine what that would happen in it would happen in a unit that, you couldn't trust your command, you couldn't trust your leadership. And that's one of the things that Richard Marchenko was talking about, was you have to be able to be impeccable with your word, because you got to be trustworthy. We'd rather have less performance out of you and be more trustworthy than be higher performance. And there's actually a graph to that. So why do I bring this up tonight? Because it seems to me that recently, and especially on social media, you say stuff to people and they do whatever they want, and there's nothing accountable for it. And your online reputation, it doesn't change. I mean, and if you don't trust a product, you don't trust the person, and that's why, a lot of the times on Instagram, you've got to see the products a little bit, because Instagram is so staged that you don't know. Well, if you take this, product, you're gonna lose 15 pounds in 2 weeks. No, you're not. You're just not. That's not the way it works. But people do that and that's one of the things behind it. And it's the same thing with stocks. It's the same thing with those people that are trusted wind up having a much easier life, because then they know when they say something that people will believe them. And that's the best way I can describe it. Anyway, thank you for listening to me rant tonight. Thank you for listening to Support the VRS Hero. I'm sorry I didn't do my best. Like I said, I've got tonsillitis a little bit. And I know that we'll be back on here tomorrow night with Ron Ripley and the Replonians. And I wish you guys, and if you're being affected by the snow, drive safely. Thank you very much and have a great night.